Hey everyone, welcome back to Podcast for Your Life. Jam here. Jason is not with us because this week we are doing the third and final installment of Brothers for Your Life. It's part 3 with the third brother, my brother Judah. Last time we had Caleb, who's my older brother. So Judah, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a foundation of who you are and set up our brothers convo.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me here on the show out in the wild. Yeah, like Jam said, my name is Judah. I am the youngest brother out of there's Caleb and then Jam and then me. I'm about 2.5 years younger than Jam and about 5 years younger than Caleb, who you heard last time. I live with my wife in Tennessee, which means that Jam and I don't get to see each other a lot these days, so these kind of get-togethers are great. And yeah, that's basically it. And I'm the youngest, if I didn't say that.
Yep. Already. Judah and I are a really good example of a brother relationship changing pretty drastically over the years. We started out with really rough and very competitive and all that stuff growing up, and then that's changed a lot over the years. So I thought Judah could tell us a little bit about that and tell that kind of story from his perspective.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we were often in little scraps and fights, arguments a lot when we were younger, but got closer as we grew older. And it's interesting. I was thinking about the fact of just kind of the dynamic of that competitiveness as the youngest. There's kind of a special place, so to speak, because I know there's a lot of studies about when you're the middle son or the oldest son or daughter, what kind of dynamic that has on your life. But I realized as the youngest, you and Caleb could almost make up anything, and call it true. And to me, it was true. Like, so an example, and this is like with teasing, you guys could be like, "Oh, Judah has hot dogs for fingers," and then Caleb would respond like, "Yeah, Judah does have hot dogs for fingers." And he goes, "Yeah, Judah, hot dog fingers." And I'd be like, No, I don't have." But like, no matter what you get, since there's 2 of you and 1 of me, it was like always true. And so I feel like the same kind of like dynamic is like with competitiveness. It's like you were the older brother, and so you set the standard, and I was the younger brother, and I needed to fall in line, fall in place. So it was like almost anything we did, it's like you couldn't be dethroned from your older brother position, so to speak.
Right.
All right. One story that I have that models this well is I remember very specifically, and it's just so funny. Even the fact that I remember this so well and so vividly says a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember the first time that I was actually going to beat you at a game, which for me was a big deal because the norm to me was, I remember just getting familiar with losing, and it like wasn't a big deal to me. For you, because it's like, oh, you're the older brother, so you must just be better and know better. And I think just kind of grew up like, oh, we play games and Josh wins or Caleb wins or whatever.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time I was going to beat you at something. It was a game of Connect 4, and our cousin was there, or our grandmother's house, and you were about to put in one of the tokens or whatever, and then realized you missed a spot where I had 3 in a row and was about to get 4. So you put yours in, and you looked. And then I obviously was about to go for it, and you like got really mad, and so you like pushed the game down, and like it all broke to pieces or something like that.
Yeah,
and and I stormed off or something. Like you just like couldn't have it. Like I was about to win. It was like about to upset the status quo. So you're like, no, it just can't be a thing.
Gosh, that's crazy. It's like Judah's the youngest. I'm older than him. I have to make sure he stays in his place. Like I have to stay like in the throne, so to speak, or whatever. So the idea like you beating me at that game was like, no, this is not how it's supposed to be. I'm the older. I'm supposed to win at things. Judah's younger. He's supposed to lose. It's worked well for me so far. Like this agreement's been fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's like suddenly. Well, it's interesting to hear about that. That story sticking with you and being significant for you is that like clearly you had the opposite, where it's like the idea of winning was a really big deal to you because it just didn't happen very frequently.
Yeah.
And so suddenly it's like this taste of like, whoa, I can win at stuff too.
Yeah.
And like clearly I was not caring about that, but it's cool to hear now, looking backward, how significant that was.
Yeah, so true.
I remember one of the things that always frustrated me whenever we were growing up, and I don't really have like a great reason now, but any even hint of Judah like copying me, like something I was doing or something I was making or working on or something I really liked, like a show or some music or something like that, if I got even the slightest hint of Judah, like what I would say is copying me, I would get really frustrated. It was like I had this incredibly rigid idea of how these things should go, and like I expected Judah to be this completely different person. Like, no, you can't do anything that I do. I've already reserved these things, that these things are me, and Judah can't do any of these. And it was very strange. It was like a big part of our childhood for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that phase of our childhood?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've thought about this, and I think it's kind of telling to just personalities and different types of people, I think, in general, and the uniqueness of those people being brothers instead of just like you do a lot of personality tests, maybe, at work or whatever, to learn to work together well, and you learn about different types of personality types. But with brothers, the only ones that you stick those personalities together with, and you basically put them in a slow cooker. They're growing up together and go through all these hard phases, like so close. So for us, it's like interesting because now the copying thing, to me, I remember just being like everything that you did was just better. So it'd be like I tried to like kind of have my own thing going on, but it always felt like whatever thing you were doing, whatever new thing or whatever you're into, the music or the clothes or whatever, it just always seemed better. I think part of that is just being the youngest brother and looking up to your older brother. And part of it too, I think, is maybe just personality. I think that you did a pretty good job of like discovering new things and like, I don't know, you had a good job of almost initiating certain things, like discovering new music or looking at new clothes or whatever. And to me, I kind of like, it was just easy to kind of like follow your lead and kind of be like, oh, that's really cool. But I think because we had similar interests, and personalities to a certain degree, like every music that you liked, I usually like ended up liking it as well.
Yeah.
And so then I would hear you listening to it, like, what is that? So then I would like want it, but then you would be like, no, Judah, this is my music or whatever.
Yeah.
So then I'd have to go and sneak it off the computer. Like I would like burn a disc of it or something like that because I was like, but I liked it, and it wasn't to me always just doing it just because you were doing it, but probably the way I was doing it and going about it as the youngest probably just seemed a whole lot like that.
What would be your perspective, or how would you retell that transition from like where we were competitive and did not get along to where slowly over time we did start to get along? Like, what do you remember and how would you explain that?
Yeah, that's good. I think part of it is just maturity. I think that we both grew up and both had just immaturity as kids, and then I don't know, things just change whenever you get older. But for me, I feel like I remember it starting to make the biggest shift around the time when you started driving and learning to drive. And I mean, this could be like a false memory, but to me, it seems like as you started gaining some more independence, just kind of inherently, then they kind of helped shift things a little bit. It didn't feel so much like I was just always there or I was always copying what you're doing. You kind of got some more independence, able to drive and had your own friend group. And I don't know, to me, that seemed to make a change in our friend, our brother relationship.
Brothership.
Yeah. Brothership, yeah.
I agree. I think I remember too when Caleb moved away to go to college. He just moved across the town, really, but he was out of the house suddenly, and so then it's like, okay, effectively day to day, week to week, I have one brother now, and we actually have a lot in common. So I was like, oh, interesting. And then the imbalance of like sometimes Caleb and I ganging up on Judah, that had kind of already died down because we were older. But I remember for the first time kind of realizing some of that stuff, like which me driving and Caleb going to college were like pretty similar time.
Yep.
But I remember realizing, oh wow, I have this brother and we have a lot in common, and that's kind of cool. And he's like someone who's always here, so it's kind of like having someone who's a friend that lives in your house that you get to be with all the time. It was like a total reframing of our brothership together, basically.
Totally. Yeah, I think too, like I remember when I started kind of being able to make my own decisions, and I think the thing that helped was I transferred to a different high school, so we didn't go to high school together, which is just a little fact. But I think that too was like, we weren't so much in each other's circles that it felt like you had to have that territorial. And I started really kind of doing my own thing. Yeah. I think you could respect and see that I was doing my own thing in high school, different than what you're doing. So it was like, okay, we can kind of meet in this common ground of these things that we do have interest in, and it's not an issue anymore. Yeah, interesting. That's probably had a huge effect. I remember one thing that started happening that was really fun is that Judah and I could joke with each other in a way. We all, as a family, joke together, which is great, but we would do certain jokes together that we would both find incredibly funny and kind of play off of each other. And one of them I remember would be this thing where I would be explaining something to someone, and it wasn't always serious for the most part, but it would be like explaining some sort of point I had, or like say something as simple as, this restaurant's better than this restaurant or something. And I'd be in the middle of that, and then I'd say, tell him, Judah, tell him. And then I'd just sort of hand the mic over to him, and then he'd basically do like, oh yeah, the restaurant is, whenever you the food they have is, and then I'd interrupt and I'd say, I'll take it from here.
as if he had like just helped me a lot or whatever. And so we do that, jokes like that, where it's like we play along with each other, and I can count on him to respond the way I'd expect him to, which adds that comedic effect. So it's kind of like we're carrying this joke in our pocket at any time that we want to use it.
Yeah.
And because we both know it and we both know our roles in that joke, it was like that kind of stuff that we would start doing, which was incredibly fun. I'm not sure if it was funny to other people, but we thought it was really
Great
funny
for us. Yeah. Yeah. So true. And it's just like some of those like really kind of absurd things where you learn to. I think that's the thing about it is when you are similar to a person, or at least have similar interests, and you have a lot of experience together, then you can bet on them responding the way that you want to in a certain situation. So it made that whole bit like funnier. Is that we grew in this place like, oh, this is what I do, this is what he does, and it's like applicable to several different situations. Yeah.
Like any good comedic bit, it's like you have roles, and there's like the ridiculous person and the straight man or whatever. But in this situation, we had those roles and a few other ones.
Yeah. Along with that, something I remember is just all of a sudden, I remember starting to make jokes that actually made you laugh, because then I remember that being significant to me. It's like, oh, he's actually, because to me you were always funny. Again, like older brother thing or whatever. Just always felt like you were smarter and better. So I remember when I started actually making jokes that made you laugh.
Yeah.
And it was usually like in the vein of just kind of really ridiculous, kind of absurd, stupid stuff, but well timed or whatever. And one of them was, there's a few different examples of this, but it'd almost be like I'd be saying something that also sounds like another word or another phrase, and it'd be like, wait, what are you saying?
Yeah.
And I would just keep saying it. And so a good example was we were doing something, we're trying to set something down, and I was jokingly saying, gently, 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 but it slowly started morphing into Jet Li, like the actor
in Kung Fu martial arts or whatever.
Yeah. And so Josh was like, are you saying gently or Jet-Li? And I didn't explain it. I just kept saying it.
Yeah, it was like he would slowly morph into something else. And he would do that with a few other things. That's one we can remember, but we still do that. And I would just get so tickled by these things that Judah would do. And it was like the way I think of it is that he found these certain buttons, because he had a lot of information about me, obviously, because we grew up together, that over time he found strategically these buttons that he could press in terms of humor for me that would always be funny. And so while that might not objectively be funny to a lot of people, to us it was great. And Judah would find those things and then press them, and I got to a point where I would think like almost anything Judah was doing that was funny, that was like directed toward me, was always funny to me. Like I didn't have a lot of I wasn't a hard laugh to get at a certain point, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
For me, the verdict on Brothers this whole time has been like, yes, they're great, obviously.
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. But what one thing I think is cool that we actually say about Judah a lot, but I'm not sure if he's heard us say this, but Caleb and I, and then what we'll say to other people, is that I feel like Judah is the best of all of us, because if Caleb and I are any bit funny or any bit smart or any bit like strategic or any bit this or that, the feeling I think we all have is, I hope I'm speaking for everybody, is that because of that, Judah gets the best pieces of all of us. So I would argue that he's both the funniest and the kindest, and like maybe the smartest and all those things. Like he has sort of the benefit of all the work that we put into him. Like we get credit, but
yeah.
I think that's where I'd land, is that even though he probably had the worst side of things childhood wise, I think he's the best version, for better for worse, of all the work that we put in. So
I'm like both touched, and I don't know what to say to that.
what would you say your verdict is on Brothers?
Yeah, I would say verdict on Brothers is, it's what life's all about, just the brothers doing what they do, and making it together, getting in the other side, and here we are,
Yeah, especially good because we didn't get to choose the situation that we're in. So
yeah,
Kim, I talked about that a little bit. It's like, well, we can have a verdict about this, but at the end of the day, we didn't choose this, and so we're glad that we were happy about it.
Right, exactly.
Brothers, survival of the fittest.
Brothers, friends you don't choose.
That's really good. Brothers, arguably one of the oldest pastimes.
That's good.
That's all the time we have. Judah, thanks so much for being on the podcast and for wrapping up the Brothers series.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As always, you can suggest topics on our Facebook page or on our website, or emailing us at podcastforyourlife@gmail.com. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good life. Here's to the future.